Hey everybody, it's Daniel here for Mobile Syrup, and today we are looking at Sony's brand new Bell exclusive Xperia Z2, or Z2 if you're watching this down south. So what's so great about the Z2, and why did it come so soon after Sony released the Z1? I mean, that device is only 6 months old. Well, clearly the company saw the shortcomings of that device, the poor viewing angles, the troublesome camera, and they decided instead of waiting a full year to iterate on their flagship, rather bring out a device that will rival any of the other big flagships from Samsung or HTC or even Apple. This device has a 5.2-inch LCD display with a 1080p resolution, but the big change from the Z1 is that it's an IPS display, which means that finally Sony's viewing angles are going to be up to par with its competitors. Now you can see there's still a little bit of a darkening when we're changing the angles significantly. But as you'll see later, this is a huge improvement over the Z1 and any previous Sony flagship, and it addresses the main complaint with former Xperia devices. Inside we have a 2.3 GHz Snapdragon 801 processor. We have 3 gigs of RAM, which is a gig more than the Galaxy S5 and HTC One M8. We have 16 gigs of internal storage, and on the back we have this 20.7 megapixel camera, same as the Z1, but this one's been outfitted with 4K video capabilities as well as improvements to autofocus and many other new modes that were not possible on the Z1 because of an older chipset. So this not only has the Snapdragon 801 processor, but inside of that has improved image signal processors that make autofocus quicker, that make color saturation better, and overall improves the camera experience. Of course, this is running Android 4.4.2, and you can see there are a few changes even to the sort of dull Sony home screen that we've come to expect over the years. You have transparency on the bottom and the top, so the wallpaper extends all the way. And that'll also extend to apps that support it using immersive mode, so you'll have the use of the full screen in apps and games. We also have a new quick settings menu here, so you can see right now we can quickly access the settings or turn off Wi-Fi. This is a new feature that came in Android 4.2. We're surprised it took that long, but here it is anyway. Of course, there are a few more upgrades down in the framework of the device. Android 4.2 adds a number of performance improvements and new APIs for developers. But at the end of the day, this is mainly about the upgrades to the core user experience when it comes to speed, when it comes to display quality, and to sound. Unlike the Z1, this has dual front-facing speakers, and they're a little bit hidden, but they're here at the bottom and the top. That'll improve media performance for playing back video, for example, or playing games. And we also have this much enhanced screen, and I'll show you what I mean when we compare it to the Z1. So here we have a Z1, and I'm just going to make sure that brightness is turned all the way up for both of them, just to give it the same. So this is brightness, and you can see actually on the right, brightness is a little bit higher. So the Z1 has slightly higher brightness, but what we do have is much better viewing angles. So we're actually filming in daylight, so this is a good example of testing the screens at what would be their most trying scenarios. So you can see here the viewing angles are quite a bit better on the left than they are on the right. Obviously we have 0.2 inches of increased screen space. So the 1080p screen on the Z1 is slightly sharper, but the IPS panel on the left will give you a richer color experience. It'll have better viewing angles, as I said, and it will give you an overall higher quality display. What else do we have? Well, we have thinner bezels. So as you can see on the left, the 5.2-inch display fits basically into the same frame as the 5-inch display on the Z1. They did that by making the bezels a little bit thinner, and by making the outside a little bit thinner as well. So you can see the chunky white frame here. It's a little bit less pronounced on the purple of the Z2. So that also streamlines the design a bit. It makes it feel nicer in the hand. When we're comparing design, though, you can see that many of the buttons are in the exact same place. This utilizes Sony's stainless steel power button that they've had since the Xperia Z in early 2013. The volume rocker slightly below that with a two-step camera button on the bottom. The camera button on the Z2 is a little bit bigger, which I like. On the right side, we also have that micro SD slot, and it comes with a little tab because both of these are waterproof and dust resistant. And on the left side, there is a slight change, which I think is for the better. You can see here that even though the pins for dock charging are in the same place, on the Z1 there were two tabs that you would have to remove, one for the USB and one for the SIM slot. This on the Z2 is actually a single slot, a single tab rather. So you remove it like so, and you can see here now you have access to the SIM slot and the micro USB slot for charging. Now, why would you want access to the SIM slot every time you charge your phone? Well, you wouldn't. But what it does is it removes one more breakage point on the device. So when all these tabs are firmly in place, this phone is waterproof. So you had a situation where people would be using too much force with these tabs on the Z1, and it would break and it would make it difficult to repair. Obviously, Sony is pushing its ecosystem of content in addition to the superior hardware experience on the Z2. And we have what's new here. So we'll actually access it in an unorthodox way, but you can see that although Sony hasn't made many changes to the core Android experience, when you traditionally would access Google Now on, say, a Nexus device, the Google Now tab would be right in the middle, so I'd just swipe up and I'd access it. Now you have to go to the right for Google Now, and to the left there's something called What's New. So What's New is Sony's portal for all of its content, and it's basically just an app. But what it does is it consolidates all the games, all the recommended apps, all the music and movies that Sony is pushing. You can see here it divides into music, movies, games, and apps. And PlayStation games. PlayStation Mobile is pre-installed on here, which is a nice touch. The game selection, not that great compared to Google Play, but obviously Sony has an edge because it has that PlayStation branding and it has some relationships with developers that Google may not have. So that may come in handy later on. For example, Rinkamsel, I'm totally butchering that name, but that game debuted on PlayStation Mobile before moving to iOS and Android proper. So that's a nice place to debut mobile games as well. The album selection, these apps have always been one of my favorite aspects of the Sony user experience. They consolidate your photos from everywhere, including Facebook, Picasa, and other cloud storage lockers. It's also really well laid out, and you can see here you can access your Play Memories online account from there as well if you have one. And of course, movies, this is a big push here for Sony. You have My Videos, which is the videos that you store on the Play Memories account. You have Video Unlimited, which allows you to stream movie content and TV shows. You also have whatever you've stored here. So the Amazing Spider-Man 2 trailer is preloaded on this device. That movie comes out on May 4th. You can see here it's just starting. Unfortunately, it looks like even Sony's... Oh, there you go. So, let's turn up that sound.
Yet you under surveillance. Why? Isn't that the question of the day? There's something you're not telling me, Aunt May.
So these speakers don't really rival the boom sound speakers on the HTC One M8, but they're good, and they are far better than what you'd find on the average Samsung device, or even what was found on previous Sony devices. Of course, Sony's pushing their throw feature, which allows you to throw content to any DLNA powered device, so you have the ability to throw it to preferably an NFC powered Sony device. So in many of the demos that Sony has given us for their products, they showcase speakers, like wireless speakers, televisions, things like that. What you do, you just tap anywhere on the top of that speaker or television to pair with the phone, and then you can throw your video and audio to those devices. The ecosystem is not quite as robust as, say, AirPlay for Apple, but if you have a bunch of Sony products, this could actually be quite useful. Of course, the name of the game here is the 20 megapixel camera, and you can see here it's focusing in very quickly on my dirty glass desk, and I apologize for that. The new features here, many of which have been unbundled and are available on Google Play for older devices such as background defocus, time shift video, and things like Info Eye. But what Sony does best is they really allow you to take great photos using their superior auto mode. And while that does not allow you to use all 20 megapixels of the camera, it allows you to use 8 megapixels, and it basically changes the settings on the camera to whatever circumstance is in front of you. So if it detects that you're trying to do a macro shot, it'll allow you to focus in more accurately. You can see here that it's changed automatically to macro, and the shutter is extremely quick. Obviously, we have 4K video, which was stated before. Now, 4K is an interesting quandary because 4000 by 2000 is not exactly a resolution that most televisions or computers can support right now. So what's the advantage of 4K? Well, obviously, when you shoot in 4K, your 1080p video is going to be better. You can crop and not lose as much detail, which is also an advantage of the 20 megapixel camera itself. So you capture more detail, and therefore you have more information to work with. This is also future-proof, so that when more 4K televisions become available on the market, this will be much more ready than the other devices that only shoot in 1080p. Right now, though, this is really not a useful proposition. I don't really think it gives Sony anything but bragging rights. And really, it's sort of a gimmick. But it's a cool gimmick because the 20.7 megapixel camera is quite powerful. As I said earlier, the sensor itself is the same as in the Z1, but that doesn't mean that the quality of the photos is the same. And that's because, like with the Snapdragon 801 processor and other devices like the Galaxy S5 and the HTC One M8, the image signal processor in the Z2 is better than in the 800. So you're going to get faster autofocus, you're going to get more accurate colors, and you're going to get a less sharpening. Things like moire effects are going to be reduced, and you're going to have an overall better photo. Now, Sony really does need to work on making its photos consistent, and unfortunately in the Z2 it seems like there are still some issues with quality. So even though the shutter speed is really good, there's a lot of situations where you'll find, and if I zoom in here, you'll find that there's just a lot of grain in the photos themselves, and that is not present on things like the Galaxy S5. So we'll do a full camera breakdown for you in the review, but this is a great phone for taking photos, and it replaces the point and shoot for the most part, but you have to know how to use it, and it's going to take a little bit of getting used to. So overall, better screen, faster processor, better sound, better software experience, 4K shooting. This is Sony's first truly mature smartphone, and I say this as a fan of Sony, but there were always issues. There were always issues with the viewing angles. There were always issues with performance or updates being delayed, things like that. Right now, even though the Z1 has recently been updated to 4.2, and it takes advantage of many, 4.4.2 rather, and takes advantage of many of the same software as the Z2, this just feels like a more solid device. It's got thinner bezels, it's got a bigger screen, it's got a much better screen, and it's worth taking a look at just for those reasons alone. So if the Bell exclusivity does not rub you the wrong way, you can grab this for $180 on a 2-year term. Sony's also going to be selling it unlocked in Sony stores for $700, and that will come with an unlockable bootloader, which will allow you to do a bunch of custom ROMing on this if you so desire. Otherwise, you're stuck on Bell, unfortunately, for this one. If you are looking for a great Sony phone that's available on other carriers, and you're willing to deal with a few quirks, the Z1 is still available on other carriers like Rogers, and it is a great phone that was just recently updated to Android 4.4.2. So this has been Daniel for Mobile Syrup, and thank you for sticking out this long video review with me, and hope you have a great day.